very bottom. 6, sum above at base.
291.
Okay. The new chapter. Let's go.
66B is for just like a line of Mishnah.
Right.
Is this Steinsaltz more available in computer format such as the art school?
Yes.
It is.
They send it with the subscription. They send it to you. I've never used it. Digital one.
Does it have the hyperlinks?
No, it's just a PDF. Okay. We'll start the new chapter today. Chapter is this is chapter 10. So this chapter is called Nara Marasa. Can we translate that? Okay. Thank Hashem that we're able to learn every day. We're learning. We should have this English meetings for Shleima, everyone that needs. Okay, so it starts like this. Nara Marasa. This is a girl that's 12 years old, that's betrothed, not married, she's betrothed. So the rule is that Avio Baila Mefir Nedarim. Her husband and her father together can annul her vows. You see that it's specifically vows that would affect the husband or would be painful to her. Vow that they're not going to have relations.
She's betrothed.
She's betrothed. That's enough. Yeah, enough of a husband.
So ball means in our terms fiance also.
Fiance, we would call it a fiance. But it's more than a fiance because if she lives with someone else, she has a death penalty.
Whoa.
So it's really married. It's just that they haven't moved in together. The Nisuin would be when they move in together. So, an earlier stage of the marriage. But it's only the two of them together. This is only the father. This is a kedushin. No, the Nisuin is the chuppa. Kedushin is just like a ring or something. Nisuin is the second part of the marriage. Right. Which has different possibilities. But over here, because of her age and because she's only betrothed, she needs two people to annul her vows together, her father and her husband. Heifer ha'av le'heifer ha'ba'al. The father annulled the vows, but the husband did not. Or heifer ha'ba'al le'heifer ha'av. Or the husband annulled the vows, but the father did not. In a mufer, it doesn't work. Now, the Mishnah usually does not elaborate like that. It just said that you need the father and the husband, and then it says one without the other, and the other one without the first one. Doesn't work.
But after Nisuin, it's just the husband.
After Nisuin, it's just the husband, right? And it goes without saying, if one of them, instead of annulling the vow, says that I like that vow, that's a good one, then for sure the other one is not going to be able to annul, unless you need the both together. Teamwork to annul the vow. Gemara asks, why the Mishnah have to repeat itself and say this one without that one without this one, that it doesn't work? You said in the beginning, huh? Right. So from the Mishnah, I could have thought maybe what it means is either or. It says avia ubaila. The father and the husband are able to. Could have thought maybe or the father or the husband. It says me no, that you need to have both. Now the question is, why didn't it say you need to have both? The Ran asks this question. What does he say? where I saw it. I saw it in the run. Oh, there it is. No, that wasn't it. Yeah, somewhere in the commentaries they asked, why does it have to go back and forth? Just say that you need both. Ad sheyuh shneim ke'echad. Right, you need to have both together. Oh, there it is. If it would have said Ad sheyuh shneim ke'echad, then I could have thought that there's a possibility. The question on the Gemara is, the Gemara is explaining that if it wouldn't have said this one without that one and that one without this one doesn't work, then I would have thought that what the Mishnah said at the beginning when it says that this one and this one annul the vow, I could have thought that maybe it's this one or this one annul the vow. I wouldn't have thought that you need both. So the Ran asks, so why don't you just say that you need both? Why do you have to go this one without this one and this one without that one? Why do you have to go through that? So he says, I could have thought, if I would have said Ad sheyuh shneim, could have thought that really one of them works, but one of them doesn't. And I could have thought it works one way or the other. I could have said, let the husband without the father, it doesn't work. But the father would work alone. Or I could have said the other way. Maybe the father without the husband doesn't work, but the husband alone would work. Therefore, it has to tell me, go back and forth and tell me this one without that one and that one without this one. That either way, you always need to have both. You can't just have one without the other.
Could it also be because like if one remains silent, it's like he accepted.
Yeah, that also is remaining sound. You need to have the annulment of both.
At the moment that one knows about it, remains silent, it's like
It's as if
he accepts it.
as if he
And then-
accepts it, right?
So it's like a permanent vow.
Right.
Maybe that's why it also.
Yeah, but it didn't actually say that. Oh, that's what you want to say. Like Hefer Habal, even if he's silent, even if he doesn't Makayim it, maybe. That's interesting.
It's like no room.
Right.
We'll call these Nedarim with like a spouse or an annul it. They have like a window of 24 hours.
Yeah. They will learn about
I
that.
remember the Torah, they went a lot into detail. Like there was two versions of the 24 hours. It was 24 hours since it was made, or it was 24 hours since it found out.
Night. Well, yeah. Right. Okay, now. It goes without saying, if one of them accepted it and said that's a good vow. Why do you have to teach this? Why is it necessary to say this at all? Now we could say, if one of them annuls it without the other one, we say that the annulment is not. Why do you have to tell me that if one of them not only doesn't annul it, but he actually says that it should be standing? He like solidifies it. So then, yeah, you have to tell me that it's not going to work. So now you drop the words trichla misni. It says ki itzrichle. It is actually necessary. When is it necessary? Going the hefer echad mem b'kiyam echad b'chazar makayim v'nishal alakamase. One of them annuls it. The other one sustains it. He establishes it. The one that establishes it then goes ahead and goes to the Rav and annuls what he sustained, what he established. He annuls his own establishment of the vow. So that which is allowed. But mahu de tema, but what could you have, what should we say? My de ukili ha'akra, that this what he established is already removed. And now the other person has already annulled. He established and also annulled. So that means there's two annulling. It should work. Kamash Malan, it comes to teach us that they can only annul together. But if one of them established it, then he messes it up. And then the annulment doesn't work anymore.
Oh, that'd be simultaneous.
It has to be at the same time. No, it doesn't have to be mamish at the same time. It could be a few hours apart. But it can't be that one of them messed up the annulment while the other one is annulling.
And then he fixes it up. It's too late.
It's too late. Now, the Ran quotes machlekes between the Ramban and the Rambam, and the Rosh. Actually, the Ran doesn't quote the Rosh. But can they return to this, to revisit this vow on the same day, and do a brand new annulling a second time, as if nothing happened? I know that the first guy that annulled, whether it's the father or the husband, it doesn't matter. The first one annulled, and the other one established that the first one's annulment is no good, because at the time that he established, that he annulled it, the other person was establishing it, so it didn't work. Even when he takes it away, that he annuls the establishment, that still doesn't work, because the other person's annulment also didn't work, right? And you need to have both. But let's say, okay, now that that's over, let's go back, revisit this, and annul it again. Would that work?
Don't
Both
they have
together.
to, nullify the annulment. You don't have to undo the.
Yeah, I don't know if you can undo an annulment, but the annulment did nothing. It
It
was only the establishment that did the establishing that did something. So then once he annuls the establishing, then maybe they can redo this annulment. So it says that's a machlekes. The Ran quotes. According to the Ramban, they are able to do this, and according to the Rambam, they're not. It's finished. It's considered like it's established. And the Rosh agrees with the Rambam. Okay.
It's not established. It's not nullified.
It's considered established.
No, the vow is-
No.
So in this respect, it's a harsher prohibition. The netter itself, we learned all these reasons, you can go back and retroactively
Yeah.
nullify a netter.
Yeah.
It seems like here.
No. You can use all of the things that we've learned up until here by going to a Rav and being mata the nether.
Well, this
The
is
question is if the husband and the father can annul it just without doing that. Just say we don't like it. Mufralach.
They veto it.
Right. They veto it.
And for the rabbi, like, what would be the law? It would still have to be the two.
No,
No,
no.
and then one.
When they go, if she goes in front of the rabbi, then the rabbi just has to say mutalach, mutalach, mutalach. Well, if he would ask, what do you regret the vow? He'd go through that process of regretting it. If she would have known, would you have made the vow? With that process, she can always annul it. But here is a different process of the father and the husband annulling it. So that has a specific instructions of how that works.
If she goes to the rabbi, like the father and the husband are.
Then they have nothing to do with that. Okay.
It's not, this is a
12-year-old girl.
6-month period.
Yeah.
12 to 12 and a
Yeah,
half.
it doesn't have to be 12 to 12 and a half. It could be anywhere under 12 and a half. Discounted. We're just saying Nara because it's even a Nara, even if she's already 12. Now, under 11, her vows are nothing anyway. So it's really from 11 to 12 and a half. Yeah. Even though her bas mitzvah is at 12, but there's another one year of vows before bar mitzvah. Yeah, there's a window of
The
that.
vow.
Yeah. Okay, now it says that we quote the Mishnah, Nara Marasa via Vila Mithir Nedera. At a Nara Marasa, this girl that's she's betrothed, her father and her husband can annul vows. We know that they have both together. Amar Rav says the pasuk. Okay, now I don't have psukim quoted in my Gemara, but I'll go through the psukim with you over here. Moshe spoke to the head of the tribe, saying, "This is the that Hashem has commanded." I'm from the Chumash now, not from the Gemara. It says, if a man takes a vow to Hashem or swears a prohibition on himself, he shall not profane this word according to whatever comes from his mouth. He shall do. But if a woman make a vow to Hashem in her house, in her youth, if a woman takes a vow in the youth, and the father hears heard the vow or the prohibition that she prohibited upon herself, the father was silent about it, then all her vows shall stand, and any prohibition that she prohibited upon herself shall stand. But if the father restrained her on the day, on the day that of his hearing, so then all the vows and prohibitions that she prohibited on herself do not stand, she will forgive her, her father has restrained her. If she, it's really v'im ha'yisiya le'ish. Interesting, in the art scroll, they didn't say and if, they just say if. It's very interesting. V'im usually means and. It says if she'll be married to a man. Now, the word married is a little bit vague because in English, married means married. But in Hebrew, married could be two possibilities. If she is to a man, translation says married. If she's married to a man and her vows are upon her, or an expression of her, an utterance of her lips, which she prohibited on herself, and the husband hears on the day of his hearing, he heard on the day of his hearing, he was silent, then the vows will stand. But if on the day of the husband's hearing, if when the husband hears on that day, he restrained her, that means he took away the vow, v'heifers nidra, nullified the vow, then Hashem forgives her. Okay. So we introduce this with a young girl. The father can annul the vows. And then we say if she's to a man, then the husband can annul the vows. Our Gemara is asking, where do you get this, that if she's betrothed, that the husband and the father annul the vows? We didn't see that anywhere.
Yeah.
You notice that it wasn't there. So, 1 second. So it goes like this. Amar Rabba, Amar Krabim, Hayusil Ish Undarela. This is the verse when we first quoted. And if she is to a man, and she has vows upon her. Now, the way the Ran learns this is that, remember, we said, we pointed out that the art scroll doesn't say if she shall be, and if she shall be married. It just says if. But the truth is that in the Hebrew text, it says V'im hayusil ish, V'im, and if. Now that and, the Ran says, that we saying before that if she's a young girl, the father can annul. And if she's married to a man, then the husband can annul. But it's coming to include what we said before, the father and the husband now can annul.
So either one.
No, it's both.
Still both.
Both. V'im hayusil ish. And if she is, and if, before we were talking about the father, and if she's to a man, and now the husband also.
Married.
No, it's not really married, it's betrothed. Right. Okay. Mikan, from here we learn that the husband and the husband and the father and the husband annul the vows of a okay. Gemara asks, how do you know that we're dealing with a betrothed woman?
Yeah.
All we said in the pasuk was if she is to a man. And if they open the art scroll, it would say married. Right? Married to a man. So how do you know that it's referring to the father? Now the Ran points out, well, what do I do with the vav of him? What are you going to do with that? The Ran says, don't worry about the vav. If it makes sense, then I'll use the vav. But if it doesn't make sense, oh, wow. Thank you.
Enable it.
Beautiful.
Beautiful fruit competition.
What's in a white bag?
I don't know.
New square. Wow.
So maybe the Gemara says maybe it's talking about a fully married woman. What are you going to do with the vav of im? So the Ran says, don't worry about the vav of im. That's only if it would make sense. If I'm dealing with a betrothed woman, then I would say the vav is including the father that would annul by a young girl, and now the husband is being introduced as well because of the betrothed. If it's only talking about a married woman and it's not talking about a young woman or a betrothed young woman, so then I would just drop that vav and just say it means if, like as it was translated here. So maybe this pasuk is only talking about a married woman. Now, I explained this according to the Ran. The Ran says I would drop the father, and I would say that the husband alone, like when you read from the text, the husband alone would annul the vow. The Rush learns this question slightly different. The way the Rush learns this question, and I still accept the father into sin. Maybe I still need the father and the husband to annul, even though she's fully married, because of the vav. I don't have to learn like that. I can also learn like the Ran, where we drop the vav because it doesn't fit perfectly. Notice the vav is not as compelling according to the Ran, and so therefore we'll drop.
Maybe that's why they didn't put.
Maybe that's why they didn't put it in here. Easily do their homework.
I feel like the rush makes more sense that was dropping.
Right.
When there's time for a question.
Go ahead.
No, it's been bothering me since the beginning. Can this Nara be against her will?
She's mentioned when can you do Mian until 12? She can do Mian.
So between 12 and 12 and a half, she can be forced to be. I mean, it
She
sounds
could-
so Taliban.
Whoa.
No, like if she says at 12 and a quarter, I swear I ain't marrying this guy, but the father says, I'm getting rid of this oath, and the husband gets rid of the oath, she's forced to marry him. This thing, I'm missing something, because it just doesn't.
No,
sound
after
right.
12,
After 12, before 12 and a half, they can do anything they want with her, like a meat market.
she can get divorced.
How does she get divorced?
She says she wants the
Family
divorce.
shear, sir.
No, she's not married yet.
Oh, but she can get divorced from a betrothal.
She can get divorced
Yeah.
from, is
Yeah.
that the Bogra thing, or?
No, Mian is she walks out of the marriage, but I think that's only until 12. I don't think that works until 12 and a half.
We get the
But she can get a regular get.
So how, this whole thing about annulling the vow, but if she says, I swear I'm not marrying this guy.
So they can annul the vows, but she can say, I want to get I want to get.
So she
Yeah.
still has last lips.
Yeah.
Okay, I feel much better.
Tell us when
I
the
feel
break-
much better.
Tell us when the break's over.
Break's over. Go ahead, eat your orange.
If she's of age, yeah, she has to. Yeah.
She has the last say. They
Right.
can arrange everything, but at the end, she
Right.
has to.
Right. Unless she's a young girl and the father's marrying her off. That's a possibility. But even then, she can step out of it. She can just walk out without a divorce. She doesn't want. Okay. The Gemara says,
I find a divorce.
huh?
If it's Taliban, how is she gonna find
Yeah, you
someone
can't
who will
do it.
divorce her? I mean,
By the way, I believe that they have divorced the Muslims.
Oh, they divorce and then they put her in the ground.
That's their
Whoa,
divorce.
whoa. It's a family shear.
I'm talking about Taliban. They're very radical.
Unfortunately.
This is why the
Okay.
time guys.
I don't know if they have a document of divorce.
Field trip,
Do we have a document of divorce? Have to be filled out.
field trip.
They just bury them, Rabbi.
It's just very-
How did the Christians have divorce?
According to them, no.
Not-
According to them,
not
So how does it work?
not
How does it work? I don't
you
know.
have to remain. I guess you have.
Is it just a rule that's not kept?
Story about Henry VIII.
Right, the end of the day. But is it just a rule that's not kept? Is that what that means?
Well, Christianity is a big.
Oh, so this,
Depends on which.
I get it. Okay. Okay.
Catholics don't, because they bring
So what do
God
Catholics
into the
do?
They have God into the marriage.
So what do Catholics do if they want to get divorced?
They're like anybody else. I mean, they either follow the rule or they don't follow. But the
They-
religion
No, there's
I'm
doesn't.
no-
here in the Pope's in Rome.
Catholics.
What is that?
What they're saying is I'm here in the Pope's in Rome. So I'm gonna do it.
Oh.
That's what they say to the
Uh-huh.
phrase.
I think
What-
there's
I'm
annulment
sorry.
though, isn't there?
Concept of annulment.
So you can know that the marriage never happened.
It used to be very challenging to get an
Now,
annulment. Now the candidates, I think.
Now they
I'm
do
not
all
an
the same.
expert, I should-
We're
Okay.
asking the
Same-sex
wrong
and
group.
So the Gemara says,
a bunch of Jews
Yeah.
that trying to figure out.
It's a Jewish answering the question. We don't know.
Now they'll bury the dog with the person.
there's this book. I got the name of the book now. There was a lady that wrote this book on Kabbalah. I think it was called Everyday Kabbalah or something. Mindy Ribner was
Oh, yeah.
her name. You know her?
Yeah.
So
You know her too.
anyway, in the introduction to the book, she writes, she said she was a Buddhist, and she spent then she I forget how she ended up coming to Judaism. She was Jewish, but she ended she spent when she was becoming like involved, so she spent a lot of time comparing, like, oh, Jews are like this, and Buddhism is like that. That was like her whole life, was saying like all differences of this and that. And then she heard Shlomo Carlebach on the radio talking. He said that just like men don't compare wives, you can't compare religions. So and she realized she has to change that.
They say, "Come here, Mami Shabbat."
Okay.
She traveled with Shlomo. We went to Russia and to Eastern Europe.
Interesting. So now let's say that this pasuk is talking about the Nesua, just a married woman. So it says, "Imishim Nesua krach reniksiv." If you notice, when it came to the Nesua, it says like this. We had and if she be married to a man, that's vimhayosilish, doesn't actually mean married. If she is to a man, and then it says, but if she vowed in her husband's house, we didn't read this. This is verse 11. And if she in base isha nadara, ay asra Israel nafsha b'shvua v'shama isha v'echeshla. So we have, if she vowed in her husband's house, or she prohibited prohibition upon herself through an oath, and her husband heard and was silent about her, then all the vows stand. But if her husband shall nullify them on the day of his hearing, then it becomes nullified. So I have a whole section about Beis Isha Nadara. I have a whole section about a fully married woman. So this verse here, that if she's to a man, cannot be talking about if she's fully married. In Beis Isha Nadara, I have the pasuk of if she's in a husband's house. The Gemara says, "Emer Tavaya ben Nesua." Maybe both verses are talking about a fully married woman. Why do I need two verses? More than just a verse, it's a whole section talking about a fully married woman. You're going to ask me that question. Why do we need two? Why do I need to have two verses talking about the same story? It's coming to teach me that the husband is only in base Isha Nadara. If the husband's house, if she vows in the husband's house, it means to say that the husband can only annul vows that were made while she's in his house, but he cannot annul vows that she had made prior to her coming into the house. Now this is different than a betrothed woman. The husband can actually annul the vows that she had made before she was betrothed, together with the husband, of course. But here, maybe what it's saying is two sections. There's no such thing as that a betrothed woman needs the father. We would just say that that the husband would annul. I'm dropping the Russians. We just say that the husband would annul, and both that's for betrothed, and for and what it's coming to tell me about a married woman, there's two sections are coming to teach me that one, that's that the husband can annul, and also that the husband can only annul if the vow was made in his house.
If the vow was made while she was at her father's house, and her father didn't know about it, and then the husband finds out once
Right.
he's living with her, well, can he?
So we're learning now that the husband cannot annul. No, once it's a real husband, then he can't. He can't annul any vows that were made beforehand if it's a full marriage.
But I understand that, because if the vow still exists, it means like that the father like didn't say anything, so it became a real vow. But if the father didn't know about it, and the husband goes
No,
back to
but
the
even
father,
it
can they
doesn't
still get
matter. No,
together?
even if the father didn't know about it, even if the father didn't establish the vow, the husband can't annul any vows that were made before he was married.
But even if he goes back to the father,
Yeah, because the father doesn't do anything here.
but here it says that they have 24 hours since they find out about it. If they just found out
No,
about it
but
after, no.
we were trying to introduce the father into the annulment of the vows for a betrothal. Now we're talking about that both verses are talking about fully married woman. There is no father. The father doesn't annul anything anymore. She's fully married. Why do I need two verses to talk about a fully married woman? Well, one is coming to exclude vows that were made before she was married. And the other one was just regular. Gemara says, why would I need that? Wouldn't you know that automatically? Which means like this, that the second verse says clearly, the Imbeis Isha Nadara, that if she took the vow in her husband's house, that automatically would tell me that the vow could not have been made before that she was in the husband's house. So what do I need? The verse of was the if. Im hayasil if she is to a man. What is that telling me? I know everything from the second verse. So it must be Vim hayasil ish is telling me that I need the father and the husband to annul the vows of a betrothed woman. She's 12 years old.
Of this age.
Not this age. Okay. The Gemara gives another possibility. The Havaya Kedushin Mashma. When it says the word Vim Hayusia Havaya, that to be, if she is, the verb is, or to be, is referring to Kedushin. And we have other sources for that in the beginning of the right. It means it's referring to Kedushin. Okay. The Gemara now asks a question. Ema av l'chudei mefer. Maybe the father alone annuls the vows. The Gemara is going to say, Imkein Basra Iser Beisavia Yani Salamali. I'm not sure how the Gemara could learn this, because the pasuk says clearly that that the husband hears and he annuls it.
This one has two quotes. You want to check this one?
I got it over here. Just 1 second. Well, what we would say is like this. That we would read the verses to mean that if the husband hears and he's silent, then that would mess it up. But we really don't need him to hear anything. We don't need him to be involved. The father himself can annul everything. Now, what does it mean? And if the husband, on the day that the husband hears, he annuls it, then we would say that it's talking about that the father annuls it. On the day the husband hears, there's a pronoun there, it doesn't say it. So we'd say that it's referring to the father. But the Gemara says, 1 second. It says that if she takes a vow in her father's house, that's going back to the beginning of this section, where if she's in her youth and she's not married at all. So why do I need that pasuk? If after she's betrothed, the father annuls the vows. Before she's betrothed, of course the father can annul the vows. Why do you have to tell me before she's betrothed the father can annul them if the father's annulling it the whole time? You'd only have to tell me that even if she's betrothed, the father can annul the vows. And that would be enough. So the fact that you're telling me that when she's a child and she's not betrothed, the father annuls the vows, that's telling me that when she's betrothed, it must be the father and the husband. Okay. Now the Gemara says, maybe the father requires the husband, the fiance, to annul. However, the fiance himself, we were switching sides here entirely. We just thought that maybe the father does everything. Now we're saying, no, it can't be the father does everything. Because then why would you have to say when she's a child? Why it must be that the husband is doing something here. Okay, now if the husband is doing something, maybe let's say that the husband does everything and we don't need the father. The father alone doesn't work, but the husband alone does work.
Wow. Isn't that against what we first learned?
What was that?
It had to be both?
Yeah, that's what we're asking. What's the source for that? What's the source that it needs to be both? Maybe what we're saying is that the husband alone would work. If you're going to say, so why does it mention the father? Where does it actually mention the father?
Here quotes for both of them, the Rambam, the Shulchan Aruch.
Without the halacha, no, without the halacha. Where does it actually mention the father in the verse? I guess we're going to the pasuk of V'im, the vav that's adding. So the Gemara says, that would just teach me that the father can mess it up, but I don't need the father to, just like we were saying before, that the husband could mess it up. But I didn't need the husband to annul. Now we're saying that I don't need the father to annul. All I know is that the father can establish. He can mess up the husband's annulment, but we don't need him at all in the annulment. In Cain, if that's the case, then why does it have to say that if she is fully married and she takes the vow, kal v'chaimer would come out to be a kal v'chaimer. If the husband can do the annulment both by a full marriage and by a betrothal, then why does it have to tell me if she's fully married that the husband can do the annulment? The husband could have done the annulment even before she was married by the betrothal. The fact that it has to tell me that after she's fully married that the husband does the annulment, that tells me that by the betrothal, it wasn't really the husband. But at least what we were talking about there wasn't the husband alone. Because if it was the husband alone, then that would have been a kal v'chaimer. After the marriage, it's the husband alone.
So the fact that there's no kal v'chomer here means that helps the interpretation.
So the fact that there's a pasuk and no kal v'chaimer, that tells me that now the interpretation has to be that when she's only betrothed, it would be not the husband alone, it would be the husband together with the father. Ema in Beis Isha Nadara, maybe that pasuk is saying that the husband annuls, not telling me that the husband can annul without the father after she's married, because I would have known that from the betrothal, that the husband already can annul without the father, when just from the betrothal. What about the kal v'chaimer? I'll say, well, the kal v'chaimer, and if there's a kal v'chaimer, then what do I need a pasuk for? I'd say, well, the pasuk is coming to teach me, laimar she'ena bal mefer b'kaidmin. It would really be telling me that the husband, not that he can annul without the father. It's coming to tell me that it's an exclusion, that he can only annul vows that were not made before the marriage. Umine, what would that teach me? Aros meisha b'kaidmin, that the betrothed can annul from before the marriage. If you need a pasuk for after the marriage that the husband can annul for vows that were made before the marriage, that would tell me that by the betrothal, the husband can annul vows that were made before the marriage. Now, how's he able to do that? It must be because of the father's partnership. Now, you have to recognize it like this. A husband, it's possible for him to have, for there to be vows on his wife before he married her. But a father cannot have vows on his daughter before he gave birth to her. So for the father, there is no such thing as kaidman beforehand. There was no before. The father, whatever the father can annul is always because of what's present. There was no before. So if we're saying now that the husband cannot annul vows that were made before the marriage, that would tell me that a betrothed woman, the husband, can annul the vows before the marriage. Now, how does he get the power to annul the vows before the marriage? It must be because of the father's assistance, because the father is helping. That means that the husband can only annul together with the father in those vows if it's a betrothed woman. After all of this, that's where we got. That we asked at the beginning, Minalan, where do you know this from? Well, okay, this is how we know it. We did every possibility here. We took it to every extreme. Okay.
Haven't we seen like examples where the parents like do a vow even before the baby's born, like give me this baby, like we'll give the baby
Like Hannah. Yeah. That wouldn't be a vow of the baby. That would be a vow of the parents. They would have to annul that vow on their own. That's not annulling the baby's vow. Right? Right.
15 of them smoke a cigarette.
Whoa, this is a family shear, sir.
That's why it's a vow. And ride a motorcycle.
The Bei Rabbi Shmuel Tana, the house of Rabbi Shmuel taught. Bein ishli ishtei bein avla vitei. What the Tana of the Bei Rabbi Shmuel is doing is they're taking me to the end of the section. These are the decrees that God commanded Moses between a man and his wife, between a father and his daughter in her youth, in her father's house. It says, "Bein ishli ishtei bein av levitai, benura beisavia," in her youth in her father's house. It says, "Mikan lenara marasa shavia bailam nedara." You see that verse? It says, in her youth in her father's house, between a husband and his wife, between a father and a daughter and a youth in a father's house. That means you need both. In the father's house, so if she's in, and it still has the husband and wife, it's talking about a betrothed woman, that the husband and the father annul the vows. That's what Rabbi Shmuel learns this. Gemara says, "Tana de Bei Rabbi Shmuel, according to the Tana de Bei Rabbi Shmuel, what does he do with the verse? They never let you get away with anything yet. What does he do with the verse that the Chachamim used, the Rabbanan? We had this whole basically two sides of a page, a whole full page, discussing that if she is to a man, that's telling me that she's betrothed, and that's also telling me that I need the father and the husband. What does Rabbi Shmuel do with that verse? He has it anyway. He has it. It said clearly. There's mukam liidach the Rava. Supposed to be Rabbah, some say. He uses it for something that Rabbah says. Now, Rabbah we don't have here. Rabbah we have on Daf Ayin. The Gemara knows about it already. And what it says over there is that if the husband dies, then the father can annul the vows without the husband.
So she would say if she's a widow, she goes back to her father's jurisdiction.
Yeah, if she's still young,
What age would that be?
12 and a half.
Makes sense.
So he's learning that this is telling me his actual expression goes like this. It says, just like before she was married, before the first Havaya, the father annuls the vows. So too, by the Havaya, if the marriage falls off, just like before the marriage, the father can annul. So too, if the marriage falls off by the husband dying, so then the father can annul the vows. Havaya just means is the verb to be, which meant marriage. Just like the first marriage, the father annuls. So too, after the marriage, the father annuls. That's what Rabbah says. Okay. So whatever the case is, I have another source. I have another usage for a source that's not being used by Rabbi Yishmael. And what does he use it for? To tell me that the father can annul vows after the husband dies. Alone, he can annul them alone. Okay, now for Rabbah, what does Rabbah do with the Tana de Rabbi Yishmael? Or Rava? What does Rava do with the Tana de Rabbi Yishmael? Rather, what would the Chachamim do? What do we need the Tana de Rabbi Yishmael according to the Chachamim? So it says, that's coming to limit what type of vows the husband can annul. The husband can only annul vows that the wife made that are going to actually affect their marriage, or anything that's inay nefesh. Now, there's a big discussion here. What about the father annulling vows? Can the father annul vows that have nothing to do with the husband?
So the husband can only annul what?
Vows that are connected, that pertain to their marriage, or if it's an affliction. What about the father's, not the husband, let's say the father annulling on his own because she's young? Can he only annul vows that are inay nefesh, that are like affliction to her?
Affliction to her,
To
the
her.
husband.
Well, she's not married yet because the father's annulling alone. So can the father annul more vows than the husband would be able to? That's machlekes.
Would it also make pertain between him and the daughter? Like if the daughter says, "Oh, I'm not going to have it."
Yeah, no, I'm not sure if that works like that. But whatever the case is, the Ran says that. Yeah, I guess so. The father can only annul vows that would be affecting the father and the daughter, like you said. And the Rambam says no, that the father can annul all vows of his daughter. Rambam, Haram Bamzal. I used to think that it says, a lot of times you see in the Ran, instead of writing the Rambam, he writes Haram Bamzal. I thought probably because you say the Rambam Zal meant that the Rambam had passed away. The Rambam Zacharin al-Racha. But Haram Bamzal meant that only the father passed away. That's what I used to think. But then I think I looked up the dates and the Rambam wasn't alive by the Ran anyway. So
You look up what year?
that's a long time ago.
1988.
Okay. Iboilo, they have a question. It's a very interesting question coming up. Baal Megas Gaias a Miklash Kalish. What is the husband? What is this the relationship, before we get to the relevance, between the father's annulment and the husband's annulment? How does this work? What is each part doing? Basically like this. Question is, let's say there's a vow. Okay, imagine a vow. There's a vow. The father chops off the first half, and then the husband chops off the second half. Or do we say that the father annulled this side and the husband annuls this side? Which way is it? Is the entire vow getting weaker, Or let's say she took a vow from something and the husband annuls half of it and the father annuls the other half. Like, how does it work in this partnership? Is it half or is each one everything? What's this? There's a partnership here in the annulling. Is each one annulling half or is each one everything? So the expression is megas gaias. Is he slicing it down? Is the husband slicing it down? Or is he weakening the whole thing? Like diluting, or is he diluting the whole vow?
Right. Wouldn't the vow be, the vow wouldn't have, like, it wouldn't diminish or anything on this both of them? Because one of them can
That's a
evolve.
third option. That's a third option. The Gemara didn't even ask that.
This is like the discussion we learned about what is common ownership.
Yeah, it was like Reb Meir. We had that discussion with Reb Meir, right? Am I walking into the to the partner, or is it decided later that this was all mine, right? Well, Heicha Kami Boilan, which means what is the relevance of this? It's a good question. What is Heichas is where is this asked? Which really means like how is this being asked? Kagain, for example, the Nedarim Daf says she took a vow that she's not going to eat 2 olives. She points to the olives. It says, I'm not going to eat the 2 olives. The Shama Aras, the betrothed husband, hears, says, Oivei, the Heferla, and he annuls the vow. Belchalton, and then she ate it. She ate the 2 of them. Iyamrina and Megas Gaias, if we say that he's chopped it down, what does it mean he's chopped it down? That he was only able to annul one of them, one of the olives. The father would have annulled the other one, which means that she ate an olive size of a prohibition. Now, because she ate both, I can't say that she ate only the other one. There's a little bit of a problem here because an olive size of a prohibition is not an olive because the olive has the pit. An olive size, a little bit of a problem. So anyway, there's a discussion here why we chose olives and this and that. Then maybe by Nedarim, do we say whenever we have a prohibition in the Torah, we always say that when they get the punishment only if they had an olive size? Does that apply to a vow as well? There's a vow, even the smallest amount, different than Torah laws, because you took on yourself. See, when the Torah prohibits something, the Torah was prohibiting it from the amount that's considered a size, which is an olive size. But when you prohibit it, maybe you prohibited everything. Or do we say that even though you intended everything, but the punishments only kick in when you ate enough that it would be significant violation? We know even according to the Torah, there's an opinion that you violate the law by eating the smallest amount. You just don't get punished until you eat the significant.
You say there's a difference between
A vow.
Isur with an olive size and Chiyuv with an olive size, because when we learned there is a difference, because then we just learned the various sizes of olives and eggs, and it was all volume displacement, and nobody ever mentioned an egg or something inside. I mean,
The
a
pit. So we did have the pit, I think. I think in Yoma we spoke about the date. Yoma, you weren't allowed to eat this large date. We spoke about the date. But if you actually eat the date, you're going to be exempt because of the pit. We mentioned it over there. I think so.
Is this as far as it goes considering what's a kazayas?
Yeah. But now we're saying, does a kazayas apply to a vow? That's a discussion here in Iran. I have a question on the Ran because the Ran didn't mention that. The Ran asks, Kotsu Gemara in Shavuos, Amar of Papa, that when it comes to a vow, you don't need to eat an olive size. Why over here do we have to mention an olive? He says there's a machlekes. There's another opinion over there that says that you do need to olive size. So we mentioned an olive. But my question is, but you didn't eat an olive anyway, because you only ate the olive without the pit. They mentioned that in the comments over there. No. Anyway. If we say that it got weakened, not that the husband took away half the vow and one of them was still prohibited. If we say that the whole vow got weakened, got diluted, then we would say, yes, she did commit a violation because she ate something that was prohibited, which is both of them are still slightly prohibited because the husband wasn't able to erase all the vow, but he did weaken it to the extent that she shouldn't get malchus. Miklas Kalash Yisur Balmo, it's still prohibited, but it wasn't be no malchus. So what is the rule? How does it work?
Here, the point says that the round points are that even if, according to the possibility of partial notification, like there's no telling to which one of the
Right.
vows will be allowed.
Right.
Others will be allowed.
Right. But she ate both, so that's why there would be a problem. Right. So Tashima, come and listen. The following, I think this is a brisa. The following brisa is going to give us a bunch of different cases of how the father can still annul a vow after the husband dies, or the husband. In other words, the husband, the betrothed husband, is going to pass away. Like we mentioned, Rabbah was explaining this, that if the husband dies, the father gets his power back. So this price is going to discuss this. We're going to have a few cases over here, 4 cases. When is it said that if the husband dies, the authority is reverted back to the father? The stricken means emptied. It's emptied back to the father. When do we say that the father can still annul the vow without the husband there because the husband died? Isman, that would be in a time, case number 1. The husband did not hear of the vow. She took a vow, the husband didn't hear it, and he died. The father can annul the vow when he hears about it.
Okay. It's the opposite of what I asked earlier. That if the husband found out about the vow and the father never knew about it, I was still confused.
Oh, we'll see about that case. We can wait a second.
I'm still confused about the whole olive situation. When they annul, like when one of them annuls, like what happens? Is it half of it annulled?
That's what we're trying to answer that question. Yeah, that's exactly what we're holding. We're bringing a case to answer that question. Oi, case number 2. Shashama b'shasak. That's the base of it. Yeah.
Who's the he?
The husband. The husband's dying here.
Husband.
The husband heard and he was quiet.
And then she dies.
No, he
No,
dies.
Then he
Hu-
dies.
husband
and
dies.
Now she's back in her father's.
You're right. Oi shashama b'hefer. Or he died, or he heard the vow and he annulled the vow. And he dies that day.
Because of the knowledge of the vow.
Yeah, no, I have to adjust this. Yeah, he didn't die. He died because of the. I can't believe she took a vow like that. You address that?
Yeah.
No,
Well, you don't think so?
it's highly unlikely. When's the last time someone died because his wife took a vow?
Yeah, no, but we hear stories of, someone gets an emotional distress over the news of somebody.
Oh.
Not the story
Not a
about
vow.
Sarah dying.
Yeah, but that's because of an event, not
She
because
heard
she said something.
She heard something.
Oh,
that upset
okay.
her.
A lot of
Uh-huh.
people drop dead because that's Takasuboto's.
What is that?
Takasuboto.
Takasuboto.
It's the heart blows out
2
the
seconds.
adrenaline.
1
blows-
second.
That it blows the heart. Well, you can ring that bell, but you ain't gonna hear the story. An emotional response, the adrenaline is released so dramatically and so hard, it literally blows the heart into heart failure. So the heart's muscle blows out like, it looks like a football, a large football.
Uh-huh.
And the Taksuboto is not someone's name, it's the name of those things when they, in Japan, where they would, like these floats on the side of a wharf or pier where the boat would go into, the colors. So they look like that shape, and that's
Uh-huh.
what the heart shape. and these people were
Uh-huh.
fulminant heart failure or actually died.
Wow.
And it's all based on an emotional response.
Wow.
So it does happen.
Wow.
It happens frequently enough that I've come across many cases.
Really?
in
What's it
40
called?
years. I think Takasubo. I might be making it between my accent and not knowing Japanese. What, as far as I know, it's get turned out to be Chinese. I gotta look it up now.
I'll have tacos.
One Taco was a little,
It's a taco restaurant on a boat.
it's not taco. Sorry.
In Rhode Island, the Chabad house one time was in on top of a Mexican restaurant. It was called. No, we called the Chabad house and we called it Base Taco. But it was the restaurant. I forget what the restaurant had a taco name in it. Taco Bell. It was on top of a Taco Bell. I think so. Anyway, if one adjustment here that the Bach does that helps out is that the husband heard and he was Mayfair and he annulled it, or the husband heard and was silent, but he died on the same day. So that the husband, the husband, Takatsubo. Uh-huh. Now the you speak Japanese?
Of course you talk
Uh-huh.
a little, yes, but I never.
So
Let me make sure now it's Japanese.
So what happened is the husband died on the same day that he was silent. He heard it, but was silent. Well, what happens is, on that day, the father can still annul it. Still has time. Okay. We had over here 3 cases. Aval, but, talking about where the father can annul the vow. Imshama v'kiyim. If the husband hears it and he says, I like that vow, keep it. He established it. Or he hears it and he's silent. And he dies on a day later. We don't have an opposite of he hears and he annuls it. Either we said the opposite. If he heard it so basically we have possibilities where the father will now not be allowed to annul. So then the father cannot annul the vow that the father had already somehow sort of established, either by not annulling it or by actually establishing it. Shama avia v'hafrila. Let's say the father heard the vow, the father annulled it. But the husband didn't hear about it until after the father died. So now when the husband's going to annul, he's going to try to annul it on his own. But he can't annul it on his own because he's not really married to her. He's only betrothed. He needs the father's help. Zui Shashanina, this is when it was taught, that if the father dies, the authority does not revert to the husband. The husband never had it. Shama Baila, let's say the husband heard the Heiferla and he annulled it. Sounds good, right? But the father didn't hear about it until the husband died. Now, we sort of said this case already. This is what we taught, that if the husband dies, the father can annul.
And vice versa.
No, vice versa not.
Right. So what happens here? They need just someone from the outside.
No, this sort of annulment where the father and husband can just annul a vow, that doesn't apply unless I have the father and the husband there. But if one of them annulled and died, then if it was the husband that did the annulment and died, then the father can still annul. But if the father annulled and died, then the husband cannot.
In the example that the father passed away, who would get jurisdiction? Would it be like an older brother, a mother?
No one. It's only the father. Yeah. there is a rabbinic rules about the brother and mother marrying her off. But when it comes to the vows, it was only the father. Okay. Shama Baila Vehefela. The husband heard and he annulled it. But the father didn't hear it ad shemes until he died.
Until the husband died.
It's actually the father died.
He didn't hear it until he died.
Yeah, which means he didn't hear it. But he was alive. Apparently, I don't know if why this matters. He was alive when the husband heard it. Okay. Ein abal yachal hafer. The husband cannot annul. Shein abal mefer ela b'shutfus. That case we sort of said before. We said if the husband can only annul together with the father. The father's dead. Shama avia v'hefela. The father heard and he annulled it. Lehispik abal l'shmaya ad shemes. But the husband did not hear about the vow. The father can then annul again. You see what happened there? The father annulled his part.
Right.
Satisfactory. Now we just need the husband to annul his
But he
part.
dies.
But the husband died.
Yeah.
So the father can then go and annul the husband's part. Well, Amar Rav Nassan Heinin Divri Beishamai. Rav Nassan says that's the words of Beishamai. Beisil Leimer Mein Yachal Hafer. Beisil says that the father cannot go and re-annul the vow on behalf of the husband because he already had annulled half, his half. What is left over is almost nothing. Let's take a look. Shema Mina, we see from this, Beishamai Megas Gaius. According to Beishamai, how does the father have the ability to annul the second half of the vow? Because the father had annulled one half. Now the husband dies, so the father annuls the second half. He inherits it. And there's significant inheritance here that it's considered inheritance because one olive was permitted, the other olive is now needs to be, he inherits that ability to now annul
She
that.
has to go back to her father's.
She
house
goes back to
anyway.
the father.
So
And
why
the father
can't
can
he
annul it.
annul the whole
Perfect.
thing?
Good. But according to Beisil, where the father cannot annul the whole thing, that's because Miklash Kalish. Because the father that had annulled the vow originally had weakened it to the extent that what's remaining is not significant enough to be passed over through inheritance. And therefore, the father is left with no ability to annul what's left over. That's one shot there. Shema Mina, we see from here that it would come out that this question would be a machlekes Beishamai and Beisila.
So the Shema Mina ends up saying
That's a machlekes.
that there's a machlekes.
Which means that Beis Hillel would say it's Miklash Kalish. That it weakens it.
We go by these.
You know, it's
Yeah.
interesting, we never really discussed the substance of the vows. It's purely the concept that you said a vow that is so usher.
Right.
I mean, you would think, well, what did she vow? Was it, hey, you know, this, that, but no, it's irrelevant. It's the
Right.
vow.
Right, it's all the words.
Yeah.
Okay, have a good day, everyone.
Say Shema Mina.